into a little bit of the story of how you started and came across this? I know you were a runner in the past.
Well, let's go back up before that. When a mommy loves a daddy very much, they will get together.
That happened.
Jumping ahead. So what happened when I was 15 years ago, I got back into sprinting after a 30-year break. And for the next 2 years, I was getting injured pretty much constantly. And one day, I lived in Boulder, Colorado, world champion runner, a friend of mine, which is in Colorado like saying my neighbor because they're everywhere, these world champion runners. He suggested that I try running barefoot to see if I learn anything. Now, I'm not suggesting people run barefoot, even though it changed my life, but here's the deal. I discovered that I had a form problem that I couldn't feel in regular shoes because they had enough padding that I just couldn't really feel anything. They were altering my gait in a way that I just couldn't notice. And I also naturally ended up correcting that form problem because when you're running with bad form in bare feet, it hurts, and good form feels great. In fact, you can spot a barefoot runner from 50 yards away. They have this weird look on their face, usually called smiling. And because it's really fun to actually feel the ground. Now, again, I'm not suggesting people run barefoot, even though you can. Human beings have been doing it for tens of thousands of years. So what happened for me is my injuries went away. I became faster. I became a Masters All-American sprinter. So in my age group, one of the fastest guys in the country in the 60 meters indoors or 100 meters outdoors. And I wanted that natural movement barefoot experience because it was clearly beneficial for me. So I also wanted to not have to argue with restaurants about whether it was legal to go in bare feet, which it is, by the way. And my wife was sick of me coming in after being out in bare feet and then walking on our white carpeting. So I made a pair of sandals based on a 10,000-year-old design idea, and I started wearing those. And then people started asking me to make pairs for them, and they told two friends, and they told two friends. And then one day a guy says, I'm writing a book called Barefoot Running, and if you treated this sandal-making hobby like a business and had a website, I could put you in the book. Well, I've been an internet marketer since 1992. I built hundreds of websites, so this is an amazing opportunity. I rushed home and pitched it to my wife, who assured me it was a really stupid idea that wouldn't make any money, it was a waste of time, and she insisted that I not do it. So I told her that I wouldn't, and then she went to bed, and I built a website. And so she kind of growled at me the next morning, but it just took off. And my wife, Lena, is a brilliant finance and operations person, and I'm a marketing product person. So she said, okay, this is for real, I'm all in. And that was just shy of 13 years ago, and here we are, going from a do-it-yourself barefoot sandal making kit to now having over 30 styles of casual and performance shoes, boots, and sandals that people use for everything from taking a walk to powerlifting to
calisthenics
to running ultramarathons and everything in between. Wow. Yeah, we have to talk about John's calisthenics.
Let's talk about you.
Enough about me. Let's talk about
enough
you.
about me.
Enough about
I have
me.
enough about me.
Enough about what I said about me. What do you think about me?
So what about the material of the shoes? What is it that separates the form?
Well, so let's back up a tiny bit. So everything that we're going to talk about, it really is about the form, not the footwear. It's just that footwear informs the form. Can I borrow your shoe, actually, the one you're wearing?
Yeah.
So I'll show you. So everything I'm about to say, I'll say a couple things. Everything I'm about to say is backed up by hundreds of pieces of research. But people still might doubt what I'm saying because this is going to fly in the face of what big shoe companies have been saying for 50 years. One of the things that I will tell you is the big shoe companies know that what I'm saying is true because they have proven that their shoes are actually problematic. So for example, Nike did a study that came out just before COVID, and they sat on it for 2 years and re-released it, where they compared one of their best-selling shoes with a new shoe they had developed. And the way the media presented the study was the way Nike told them to present the study, which was that a new shoe reduced injury rates by 52%. Okay. Sounds like a really big deal.
Yeah.
Until you look at the numbers. So when you look at the numbers, the people in their best-selling shoe, in a 12-week study that Nike designed, over 30% of the people wearing that shoe got injured. In the new shoe, only 15% got injured. So yeah, it was better, but 15% is roughly 1 out of 7.
Yeah.
If I said to you that I'm going to buy you dinner at a restaurant every night this week and you have a 1 in 7 chance of getting food poisoning, you wouldn't take me up on it. Mm-hmm. And 1 out of 30% is roughly 1 out of 3. If I said, let's go to that same restaurant, but it's going to give you food poisoning twice during the week, you'd never go. if you went into a running shoe store and you said, I'm looking for a good shoe, and they said, this one only injures 30% of the people wearing it in 3 months. Like, no, or 4 months. It's like, no, I don't want that. Well, okay, only 15% of the people got injured in this other one. It's like, don't you have a shoe that isn't going to injure me? Yeah, we don't sell that. So again, the big shoe companies know, and injury rates for runners haven't changed since the advent of shoes that look like this, since about 1974. Roughly 50% of runners and 80% of marathoners get injured every year. And despite all the advances in technology, big air quotes, that number hasn't changed in 50 years. But you go back another 10 years, go back into the late 60s and 70s, if you look in the literature for information about what causes injury rate or injuries for runners and how to cure them, you just don't find it because it just wasn't happening. So let's have a chat. And it's not because there were so few people doing it. There was a lot of running clubs that had a lot of runners. They just weren't getting injured. Actually, moving into the 70s and 80s, Arthur Lydiard, coach from New Zealand, tiny little country, had more world champions and Olympians than any other running coach that I think ever. And his runners just like never got injured. And they were in shoes that I'll show you are similar to mine. And he had them training barefoot a whole lot. He was basically building strong feet, and that made these guys indestructible, and women indestructible. I know some of his athletes, they said, we never had an injury until we got sponsored by a big shoe company. So what's the story with these? Okay, let's start with the easy thing.
Don't destroy them.
No. I won't do anything to it other than burn it.
No, please.
Because that's what it deserves. So here's the first question. Is this the shape of your foot? That pointy thing up there?
No.
Right. If it is, guess what? It's not supposed to be. So what I love to say about that is when you do push-ups, do you do this with your fingers or this with your fingers? You do this. Gives you better balance, more strength. It's just, that's the way you do it for the best use of all your biomechanics. Same thing with your feet. They're not supposed to get squeezed together.
No.
If you squeeze them together, you can't use your arch,
Sure.
which is a super strong structure. So that's part one. Part two, the elevated heel, that messes with your posture. It lifts your heel forward, it moves you forward. You have to adjust in your knees, your hips, and your back. That's not good for you. The cushioning, I'll say two things about it. The first one is easy. The second one is going to make people confused. So your feet have 200,000 nerve endings in your soles, more than anywhere but your fingertips and your lips. That's to send information to your brain so your brain knows how to control the rest of your body for efficient, effective, and enjoyable movement. So that cushioning makes it so you can feel next to nothing. That ain't good. Your brain's not getting any information, which brings me to the second point about cushioning, and that is when your brain can't get that information, it'll often try to land harder to try to feel something. So cushioning doesn't actually cushion.
I have a question on that.
Oh, man, already you're interrupting?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I love it, actually. It's because I've read that the impact on running is like about 2,000 times your own weight when you run on your on your feet.
That would be impossible.
Okay.
But you're in the right direction. So basically, when the amount of force that you hit the ground with, it's kind of funny. This is just physics 101. It's however heavy you are, whatever your mass is, however high you're coming off the ground,
right.
and then however you're hitting the ground, and whatever you're doing to mitigate that force. But typically, your average runner, your basic weekend jogger, is hitting the ground with 2 to 3 times their body weight. Sprinters, like me, between 4 and 6 times their body weight. So I weigh about 145 pounds, let's call it 150. So I'm hitting the ground sometimes with like 900 pounds of force. Well, if that were something that we couldn't tolerate, how are people doing it?
I agree.
You're built to be able to handle that if you do it in the right way.
Yeah.
Whether it's 2 to 3 times or 4 to 6 times. So, but the interesting thing is cushioning doesn't reduce the impact forces. What cushioning does is it spreads the pressure out. So your feet have mechanoreceptors, pressure sensors basically. So it spreads the pressure out over more surface area so you don't feel it in your feet, but the force doesn't change. It still goes into your body.
I see.
And if you're wearing a shoe with an elevated heel, you tend to land on your heel with your foot in front of your body, which means your leg is relatively straight. So that force, what happens is, instead of being attenuated by the structure of your foot, by using your arch, using the muscles and ligaments in your foot properly, and in your ankle, and your knee, and everywhere else, that it's called, what you get is what's called an impact transient force spike. This is some term that Dr. Daniel Lieberman at Harvard came up with. And so that spike is just going straight up into your joints at a rate that's so fast you just can't do anything about it. So that's what happens when you're overstriding, landing with your foot in front of your body on your heel. Also, when you land with your foot in front of your body, no matter how you land, you're putting on the brakes. You're slowing things down. So anyway, back to feet. So the other thing about feet, you have a quarter of the bones and joints of your entire body in your feet and ankles. Joints are about movement. So your feet are supposed to bend and move and flex because that's about balance, agility, and mobility. If you don't let them do that job, all that function tries unsuccessfully to move into your ankle, your knee, your hip, your back. So, and you can't, and I mean, look, that's actually not bad in terms of flexibility, except that's not where your foot bends.
Well, sometimes it does.
Not there. If you go back that far, there's no joints back that far. There's joints to about here. But suffice it to say, that's just not where your foot bends. Now, again, that's not bad for that part, so I'm okay there. It's a little hard to get there, but at least it moves. But most shoes, there's nothing. I mean, like basketball shoes we have, they just don't move at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And last but not least, the foam breaks down. It never breaks down evenly. So this is a great story about social media platforms. I'm in the airport, and there's a guy walking in front of me who his feet are turned in like this, because the foam on his shoes, on the inside of his shoes, is just worn out.
Yeah.
And so I get a video of this, and I put it on Facebook, and everyone's saying, "Oh my God, those shoes are horrible! Look what it's doing to his body." I put them on the same video on Instagram, and people say, "Stop body shaming that guy." It's like, body shaming? I was shoe shaming that guy.
Yeah.
So the foam breaks down. That changes all the biomechanics. It changes the alignment of your foot. That ain't good. And more foam isn't better. There's research from Christine Pollard at Oregon State, and she was really surprised. She assumed foam is good, more foam is better, and she found out that it makes no difference. All foam basically sucks energy out of you and does not reduce the impact forces. So that's problematic. And they wear out fast. So these things are designed to wear out and they say you need to replace running shoes every 300 to 500 miles. It's a big hit on the environment. And the question is why, and the answer is because all these materials are designed to break down at roughly the same time. So you have to replace them. So that's what's wrong with this.
And what's right with yours?
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Interesting.
and again, what we're doing, I should have brought a shoe that it wasn't one that I was wearing. So what we're doing, I'll give you that, is
Yeah, my shoe, please.
be gone with you. So what we're doing is all about letting your feet do what's natural. So we start with a wider foot-shaped toe box, so your toes don't have to get squeezed together. Low to the ground for balance and agility. We're not elevating the heel. We don't have that thing called toe spring, which actually puts strain on the tendons in the top of your foot. The shoe is super, super flexible in pretty much every direction. Now, I will admit, this is our lightest weight, most, quote, barefoot running shoe. I designed this with a guy who actually used to be at Nike for 30 years, trying to get them to do things like this, and they would never do it. So we have a whole other line of casual and performance shoes, boots, and sandals, but demoing this on this one. So low to the ground for balance and agility, no heel lift, no toe spring, really, really flexible. The sole is designed to give you grip and traction, but also be thin enough to give your brain the information that it needs to know how to move the rest of your body. It's backed with a 5,000 mile sole warranty. We made the rubber extra durable. And if you want more or less of a barefoot feeling, you can take out the included insole or sock liner for more barefoot feeling, keep it in for a little protection. And then we just designed shoes with for specific needs. So for our trail running shoe, it's a heavier lugged sole. We put a little, what we call trail foam, tiny bit of foam, just a really little bit hiding on the inside of the shoe. There's no foam to break down. Oh, the other thing, these things are so lightweight, you barely know you're wearing them. We've literally had people say they went to bed still wearing our shoes because they forgot they had them on.
You said that.
So they may have been passed out drunk. I didn't ask.
Yeah.
But no, we actually had a guy working for us who was at a trade show, and he went out, had lunch, and thought, all right, I better get back to the booth. I better put my shoes back on. And he looks down, and they were already on his feet. So he just totally forgot. So that's the gist of it. I'm probably forgetting something. There's some little things like a lot of our shoes have this webbing structure here.
Yeah.
These pieces aren't sewn down, so this goes around your heel and up into your instep. So you can adjust these to get a nice snug fit around your midfoot or your instep, which allows your toes to relax even more. So the fun part that we've seen, my wife says it best actually, there's enough shoe companies in the world, we don't need another shoe company. Unless your shoes change people's lives. And crazy as it may sound, just by letting your feet do their job so the rest of your body can do its job has been life-changing for hundreds of thousands of people. Having the right posture, by not having the heel lift, being able to feel things again, being able to use your toes. We have power lifters who are setting PRs. I'll give you the most interesting one. To me, parents of kids who have autism and ADD and ADHD, their parents say these are the only shoes they want to wear, and they're functioning better. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not playing one on TV or the internet. I'm just telling a story. I'm not saying this will happen to you, of course, but these are just stories that we've been told. And I have a theory about why. And it's basically because of the same thing that Ritalin does. Ritalin is a mild stimulant, but it's just enough that it calms down people's brain if they have those conditions. I used to live in New York City, and I used to find it weird. I could meditate better on a subway when there was just a background hum that was a little louder than my thinking. And I think it's a similar thing happening for these kids. They're getting just enough stimulation that they weren't getting before that's allowing them to be have that experience. Or we had some people with Parkinson's say they have their symptoms are ameliorated somewhat when they wear our shoes, and I think it's the same reason, because they're getting stimulation into a part of their brain that wasn't getting it before, so they're getting a dopamine hit, so it's applying more dopamine, which is the problem with Parkinson's. I don't know that that's true, it's just a theory at this point, but when we hear stories like this, it kind of makes you wonder what could possibly be causing that. And then, of course, again, people having great results with sports. We have professional athletes in pretty much every sport who are training in our shoes, but they're getting paid to compete in other shoes. So we're working on that.
Interesting.
Well, John, you do calisthenics, and you were telling me earlier how you have to almost be barefoot because you hate the shoes so much.
Because most of the balance that you're getting comes from your feet and the sensation. Like the first thing I've done when I tried the shoes was handstand. And not even my feet.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
So you have to get the sensation in your feet by putting them in the air.
Exactly. Because when you come down,
yeah,
it's that sensation is like unique, and when you know your body enough, you know that when you land, if I have shoes, my handstand is not going well. If I have socks, my handstand is not going well, and so that's why I'm training barefoot. But I was really surprised, actually, that I didn't feel the difference between barefoot and having those shoes.
Well, and the shoes you were wearing were not our lightest shoes.
Yeah, that's what you told me.
So if you had these, that would be even better, I bet.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So how are they designed? Like you said, they're designed for different activities and different exercises and stuff. What are the differences like there?
Well, the DNA is always the same. So flat, wide, low to the ground. Basically, we want things to be as close to barefoot as we can, but accommodating needs that people have. So, for example, to go on the opposite end of this, we have a fully waterproof snow boot. So you're not getting the same sensation on the ground. It has a bigger lugs on the tread. It has a slightly insulated layer. It has the insole has a heat reflective layer, but it weighs about half as much as any snow boot you've ever worn. Same thing. We have a fully waterproof technical hiking boot that weighs 40% less than any hiking boot we've ever seen, and one coming out in the spring of 2023, which is such a weird thing to say, that's even lighter and more flexible. We've done it in conjunction with Michelin. They've developed new outsole material that is amazingly lightweight, really, really thin, really, really strong. So we're super excited about that. So that's one example. The biggest one is simply, so we started out with a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. Then people said, that's great, but I'm not going to make my own shoes. So I found a way that I patented to do a ready-to-wear version of that sandal. And it was a thong-style sandal, but not causing the problems that people normally think of with thongs, because if it's just a flip-flop, you got to jam your toe into the thong and grip with your toes. This, the lacing goes all the way around your heel, so it just holds on your foot, and there's a sole there, which is really what footwear's been for thousands and thousands of years. Something to protect your foot, some way to hold it on, maybe some insulation. So after, I don't like the thong style, we made a sport sandal style, so webbing that goes across your foot. Then people said, what do I do when it's winter or when I have to go to work? So we made a casual canvas shoe. That was our first shoe, which the thing about our shoes, people use our shoes to do everything they can think of, things that we never thought of and things that we didn't design the shoe for. We build this casual canvas shoe, and like a month later, we're getting pictures from people. Hey, look, I'm at the top of Kilimanjaro. It's like, what the? It's not. All right, whatever. Yeah. So, and we hear that all the time. People doing things that we never thought of, and they're doing it in our shoes. So from the casual shoe, people said, hey, I need a running shoe. From the running shoe, I need a trail running shoe. And it just expanded from that. And we have designers and developers on our team who've been doing this for 40 plus years. So we can kind of see sometimes where there's a hole in the product line that we know if we built that thing, it would be a really good product. And we're right like 80% of the time on those. And sometimes they surprise us. We designed one shoe, it's called the Kelso. It's a retro looking shoe, but we haven't been around long enough to be retro. So we thought, maybe not. So we just sat on it. And one day we had a meeting with REI, and we just didn't know what to show them as a new casual shoe. So we pulled this one out of our bag, and before it landed on the table, they went, "Oh yeah, we want that for all of our stores." It's like, okay, guess that's a winner. And we knew it was nice. We just didn't know people would accept it from us. And the answer is they did. It became one of our best-selling shoes.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Remarkable.
Yeah, because when you look at the look of the shoes themselves, the first thing that you think is like rock climbing shoes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You were looking at the wrong shoes, man.
Yeah.
We got some stuff that doesn't look anything like rock climbing
Yeah.
shoes. You know, we are actually making an approach shoe, and we're not making a rock climbing shoe per se, because again, there's certain things where you need a specialized shoe, no question about it. Rock climbing is one of those places where you're basically adding a tool to your foot, and instead of letting your foot be the tool, because there's very, very few times where doing something different can be helpful. That said, you look at rock climbers, and the first thing they want to do is get out of their shoes. It's like basketball players. They just want to get out of their shoes. You go to a track meet, you watch especially the people sprinting. The first thing they do when they're done sprinting is get out of their shoes.
True.
That's actually not a good sign. And the thing about track is the shoes clearly don't make a difference. And what I mean is, I forgot the name of the book, Science of Sport, something like that.
I think this. Yeah.
It analyzed Jesse Owens, who ran on a cinder track surface. And basically, if he was running on a Mondo track surface, the ones we use now, they said he'd be barely slower than Usain Bolt. Same thing with a guy in 1971 set the world record in the 100-yard dash, and still the world record because they stopped running yards, they started running meters right after that. But he ran a 9 flat 100 yards. That's about a 9,800 meters. And again, he did that on a cinder track. If you figure out how much better he would have run on a regular track, that again makes him almost as fast as Usain Bolt. And what's really fun about this guy, his name's Delano Merriweather. He's a physician. He was the first black man admitted to Duke University Med School, and during his 4 years there, he was the only black guy in the whole school. And you wouldn't know his name, but he has changed the world. He was on the team that figured out that pregnant women need folic acid. I mean, he's just done all these incredible things, including having the world record for the 100-yard dash, 50 years later. And if you meet him, he won't bring any of that up. Just really amazing guy. And so that's just a really interesting thing. Or even more modern, the Eliud Kipchoge, the guy who ran the sub-2-hour marathon, under perfect conditions, flat track, just going back and forth with people pacing him. So Nike liked to claim that it was because of the shoes they made for him. And there was an article that came out like January of this year where he was really mad, saying it wasn't the shoes, it was my legs.
Yeah.
Needless to say, Nike did not promote that. So, and it's true, it was his legs. He only ran, compared to his best time in the Berlin Marathon, which is about 2:01:40, I believe, he only ran 4.5 seconds per mile faster under perfect conditions.
Yeah.
I don't think the shoes made the difference.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I was thinking when you were talking about shoes and performance. There's always a part of technique behind the use of shoes. Yeah.
Again, it's the form, not the footwear.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I'm working with the guy that I developed this shoe with. We're working on a sprinting spike. What can I give away? That doesn't use most of the technology that's currently in sprinting spikes, and the places where it does use the technology, it literally turns it upside down. That's all I can say. It's wacky. But it won't look like anything or function like anything that anyone's ever used. And what I can tell you is that the design of modern sprinting spikes is a lot of mythology. It's like they made this design, somebody won a race, everyone says that must work. There's no evidence for that.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we are kind of trapped in this paradigm of cultural foot binding, so to speak, with the Nikes and the bigger companies telling you your foot has to be like this is the perfect shoe, but you're countering that.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. And here's the simplest proof that I can give about the problem with modern athletic footwear in particular. If it was so good, after all these years, they had plenty of time to make it work really well. A, why are injury rates the same? And B, why is there a multi-billion-dollar market for aftermarket products? Insoles, padding, I mean, all these things to make them work better. The shoe companies know that these things are being sold. Why don't they just build it into the shoe?
Yeah.
Right.
It seems somewhat obvious, but they don't do that. In fact, the shoe companies, like I said, know that they are causing problems. So Brooks, for example, they have a program called their Run Signature program. They put a couple of dots around your knees. They watch how you squat. Then they put you on a treadmill in socks, not barefoot. They don't want you to think you can run barefoot. And they watch how you run. And then based on that, they recommend the shoe that's right for you. Well, the Army tested this idea. and found out that it doesn't matter what shoe you wear, injury rates were exactly the same. This is not news to anybody in the footwear industry, but we've literally had people say to us, or say to people that we know directly, so it's only 1 degree of separation, the whole idea of natural movement that we're doing is legit. It's just that they say, if we did that, it would be admitting we've been lying for 50 years. The key word in that is admitting, not discovering, admitting.
Remind me of the pharma industry.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens is, here's the other thing about the footwear industry that I've discovered in the 13 years that I've been in it. It's a bunch of copycats. If something starts to work, everyone else is terrified they're never going to sell another shoe, so as quickly as they can, they try to do their version of it.
Yeah.
And these ideas kind of come and go, and people love to say that the whole minimalist idea is one of those things that swung over here when the 5 fingers came out, but now it's gone the other way. It's like, it never went the other way. Our business has been growing year after year after year after year, as have our competitors, and there's more people entering this space all along. So it's just that idea, they couldn't get behind this idea. So, but that one of like cushioning makes sense, more cushioning must make more sense. So, and when Hoka started doing really well, everyone's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So they're all doing the same kind of thing now. And misusing physics like there's no tomorrow in the process. So here's my favorite one. You guys are smart, you'll get a kick out of this. So, so most of the new like super maximal shoes, they have a layer of carbon fiber in the middle. Do you know why?
I don't.
Can you guess? You're a smart man.
Something about the charge of,
Huh.
I don't know, the
Yeah.
current? I really don't know.
Interesting. Well, what I can tell you is when you read articles, including stuff that's been in the New York Times, they say, oh, well, the carbon fiber acts like a catapult. No. They say, oh, it acts like a spring. No. They say it's designed to help you rock from your heel to your forefoot. When you look back at Kipchoge running the Sub-Saharan Marathon, the first half of the marathon, he never touches his heel. So that's not it. They go, oh, it acts like a lever. No, a lever needs a fulcrum. There's no fulcrum anywhere. The reason, and if you ask, the shoe companies haven't said a word about why they do it. They do it for structural reasons. If you had that much foam without something in the middle, that foam would just shear and break down in no time. So it's totally for structural reasons. But people go, oh, it must be making you faster because otherwise why would it be in there? For something totally different. So you're right. The shoe companies with admittedly brilliant marketing, and I say that not to be, I say it with a bit of envy, to be candid, but also when I say it, they're misusing information in a brilliant way by convincing you things like you need arch support. It's funny, you need arch support if you have flat feet or high arches. Can you think of any other time where you have two completely opposite conditions that need the exact same thing? Well, and there's research showing if you put arch support in the shoes of healthy athletes, it reduces the muscle mass and strength in their feet by up to 17% in 12 weeks. This shouldn't be surprising. If you put your arm in a cast, 8 weeks later, it doesn't come out magically stronger. If you support a joint by not letting it move, the tissue around that joint gets weaker over time. Astronauts do not come back from space stronger. They aren't using their muscles properly, they get weaker. Same idea. So they've been, I don't know why the hell I was talking about that. So suffice it to say, they've been giving you these stories about physics that aren't actually true and convincing you that you're broken, there's something wrong with you, despite the fact that you can go to places all around the world where they've never had their shoes, and those people are really fine. And we believe it now. It's been 50 years. It's been more than 2 generations.
Right.
So, tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. Tell that often enough, and it becomes common knowledge.
Right.
And that's where we are right now.
So combating the common knowledge is
Really hard.
It's really difficult,
It's
in
really
today's
hard.
world, especially without the marketing power that you were just describing.
Yeah, well, luckily, the number one thing that has grown our business and sells this idea is the experience of it. I mean, the experience John was talking about. You put these things on your feet, you have this very different experience. That's what sells it. And luckily, we have enough. Our shoes look unusual enough, but not too unusual, that people stop you on the street. I mean, I say to people, if you don't like strangers, don't wear our shoes, because they will stop you to talk about our shoes, or they'll know about it and ask you about it.
Yeah.
So one or the other. So the only way, you can't just tell somebody they're wrong. You may have noticed that doesn't work very well. You can't just tell somebody that there's something better, because then they're going to look to try to disprove it so they can hold on to what they already believe, which is the same thing that happens if you tell them they're wrong. So the only thing you can do, if they haven't had the experience, is try to direct them to something that they understand that makes them realize that what they believed, because of what shoe companies told them, and what they've experienced either just doesn't make sense, these two things can't exist together, or their own experience actually undermines what they believe. So if you're someone who likes being barefoot, not everyone does, then why are you putting on a shoe that squeezes your toes together, makes it so you can't feel the ground, changes your posture? If you go to a yoga class and you feel really connected to the ground, why would you put on some big clog where you can't feel the ground anymore? Why would you wear something where you get the balance and agility of being low to the ground, and you know that the higher you get off the ground, the less stable you are? Why would you want to do that? Or I like to say, if your feet don't feel better at the end of the day than they did at the beginning of the day, you're just wearing the wrong shoes. We have people on their feet all day, every day, thousands and thousands. Our warehouse workers, our customer service people who have standing desks because they like that, doctors, nurses, restaurant workers, people who work in salons, who say, I've never been comfortable at the end of the day until now. Yeah. And it's from just letting their feet do those little micro movements to balance and keep them stable, instead of being on a stability thing that makes you unstable, where you're trying to move your feet, and because they can't, that isometric tension gets really stressful, really tiring. So the other thing I like to say is, let's think about baby feet. Those cute little things at the end of their legs, and those pudgy little things you like to nibble on and tickle and whatnot. When a baby is learning how to walk, would you ever think of putting something on its foot that squeezed its toes together? Would you ever think of putting something on its foot that raised its heel so it messed with its posture? Or was so stiff that it couldn't balance correctly because it couldn't move its joints? Or had so much cushioning that it couldn't feel anything so its brain didn't know how to move the rest of its body? Because you watch them trying to figure it out. It's a brain thing to learn how to walk as much as it is a physical thing. I mean, you would never do any of those things to a baby. And then I pull out a shoe like the one you had and go, then why are you doing it to you? Right. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. People go, yeah, that doesn't make sense. It's like, we have an option. Try it, you'll see. And I say to runners in particular, you don't need to run in our shoes. You don't need to replace everything you're doing. There's a time and a place. And the running thing is really interesting because there's research from Dr. Isabel Sacco showing that runners who do an 8-week foot strengthening exercise program over the course of a year had 250% fewer injuries than runners who didn't do the exercise program.
Because they improved the technique?
They got stronger. Stronger feet help. Okay. So, because simply they did an exercise program, feet got stronger. That's all they measured. And I say over a year because that's how long the study lasted. It may have gone on for much more than that. Well, the second interesting thing is there's a study from Dr. Sarah Ridge showing that you get the same benefits from that foot strengthening program just from walking in shoes like ours. She used a different shoe in her study, but she says you should get the same benefits from using Xero shoes. So now there isn't a study that says if you just walk around in our shoes, you'll have a 250% lower injury rate if you're a runner in regular, quote, regular shoes. But do the math. The thing in the middle is the same exercise program. So if that math makes sense to you, it kind of makes sense to give it a shot. Similarly, you finish a race, there's a whole movement about recovery products. Well, you only need recovery products because of the extra strain you put on them. We have people who've done ultra marathons, and at the end, when everyone says, I need to recover, the next day these guys are going out and running another marathon. But the point is, run in whatever you want. Use these things for casual use. Use Xero Shoes for casual use or for active recovery. And active recovery just means that as you're recovering, you're keeping the blood flow moving, you're keeping the muscles, ligaments, and tendons moving. So you can do that in our shoes better than anything else. So I'm not trying to convince everyone to just suddenly just stop what they're doing and do what we're doing. There's a time and a place for everything. And if you're totally fine in a pair of regular running shoes, great. This will help you be even more fine, or it could help you be more fine. I can't make any promises, of course.
Right. So you talked a lot about active footwear and everything, but what
Did
about?
I?
Yeah. What about like formal footwear? Because I know those can get
He didn't remember.
Those can get even tighter.
I was just thinking active compared to what? What the hell are you talking about?
What?
What about passive footwear?
Do you think I pay attention to what I'm saying? It comes out of my head and it's gone, man. Casual or fashion or dress things.
Yeah.
So let's say we're on the way. We tried a number of products that were dressier, that did okay. The people who got them loved them, but they didn't sell that well. And I'm trying to think about this really quickly. We have a number of casual products. Our first shoe was a casual canvas shoe. We still have that. We have a few variations of that too. We have some stuff coming out in the spring that is dress casual, that is gorgeous. I can't wait for it. I hate saying coming out in the spring because that
it's
just
over
seems
the spring.
Yeah.
Spring is next year.
it's not that far away, kind of, but it feels like it's forever away.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. Like for most of my life, I made a living. I do something, I get paid, then we're done. So the fact that I'm already planning for fall of 2024 makes my brain explode. But that's what we have to do in this industry.
Yeah.
But we have a leather ankle high boot for men that is beautiful. It's coming out. We're re-releasing it in the leather version in November. We have, I'm going through the list in my head, and it's really hard for me to do. We have a couple of casual shoes, like a casual slip-on called the Aptos. That leather boot that I mentioned is called the Denver. For women, we have like a ballet flat called the Phoenix. We have a Mary Jane called the Cassie. We have a really cute rain boot called the Gracie. I'm literally trying to picture what I have on the wall behind me when I'm in our conference room, and I'm not getting them all. This is not dress, but in terms of active, we have a fully waterproof hiking boot. I mentioned that actually. We have that fully waterproof snow boot, which I already mentioned. I'm getting redundant.
Do you have children's shoes or like baby
We
shoes
do.
too?
We take some of our shoes and go down to a youth size 12 right now, and we are looking to go down to much smaller for like toddlers. I don't know if we're going to go anything below that because you really don't need anything below that.
Well,
Around
except for
1
the
year old or something.
ADD, ADHD treatment or
That's true. But I mean,
help.
like from birth to 2 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Typically you don't need something there.
No.
But some parents want something, so that may happen.
Yeah.
But to be totally candid, the challenge with making kid shoes is it doesn't cost any less to make kid shoes, and parents aren't going to pay the same amount for their kid shoes because they grow out of them so quickly. But we actually have a Facebook group. It's our Xero Shoes Kids Buy, Sell, and Trade group. So as your kids grow out of a shoe, you can sell it on that, and
that's
other
cool.
people can pick it up. And
Yeah.
that was really fun.
Nice community.
Stay-
It really is. It's very neat.
Yeah. That's really cool. Well, Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know I've learned a
Yeah.
lot. Jean?
Me too. It's like fascinating. It's
Well, thank you.
The
honestly,
importance
yeah.
of the foot
I'm a
and
fan.
the health and-
Thank you.
Except to be honest, the only setback for me is because I'm a short guy, and walking with those shoes make me feel even shorter.
No, it makes you cuter.
I know.
Dude, you're taller than I am. So
I thought about it too.
No, people have actually mentioned that. The biggest thing was like, oh, I got to get my pants hemmed. So it's like, because they are like a half an inch shorter. I totally get it. But what's funny about that? Really quick, we have some basketball players who said that. It's like, but if I'm wearing your shoes, I'm like 3/4 of an inch shorter. I go, see how your vertical jump is. They go, oh man, I'm actually jumping better because I'm getting more better force production into the ground. I'm jumping higher. I'm using my muscles in my feet, my legs better. So we have not had one basketball player yet who isn't jumping higher because they're not using all that foam that sucks energy out of you. So,
Yeah.
You lose a half an inch, you gain an inch.
So I'm gonna go walking, jumping around.
Yeah, you'll be dunking in no time, trust me.
Thanks.
I mean, on the 8-foot rim, not the
Okay,
10-foot
okay.
rim. Yeah.
Got it.
The children.
Yeah, that little preschool rim that's like at about waist high, you'll be crushing that thing.
I feel better now.
In fact, you're going to feel huge. You're going to look at that and go, how'd I get so tall?
Yeah.
You're like jumping on the moon.
I want video of that.
Be sure to record that later.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We got it.
Well, Stephen, tell the people how they
Pleasure.
can get a pair of the shoes.
People, it's really easy. Go to xeroshoes.com, and that's xeroshoes.com. But of course, if your computer accidentally makes you type in Zero, it'll still get to us. And then on social media, we're at Xero Shoes or /Xero Shoes, wherever you happen to, @ or /.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Right, thank you guys so
awesome.
much.
That was cool.